Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played for years with the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And this is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk about all the issues in hockey. And this is a big morning if you're a USA Hockey fan after a win in the World Junior Championships over Canada. They are now historically 4-0 in gold medal games against the World Junior Championships. Tom, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But first, I want to introduce our special guest, Mike Agello, who covers the Maple Leafs for Hockey Buzz and does a really nice job. No one knows that team better than Mike when it comes to analysis. And, Mike, I want to get into it right away. Already we see things like Joe Thornton being on the first line. I'm guessing that's a training camp thing. I just can't imagine that we would see that on a regular basis, but maybe on an intermittent basis. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought that there would be some situations where Sheldon Keefe would mix things up during the season and put Thornton with talent like Tavares or Matthews. But he did that with Spezza, spotted him last year. He shook things up. In the playoffs, he put Tavares, Marner, and Matthews together when they weren't generating a lot of offense. So when Sheldon Keefe in the first media availability came out and nobody had asked him the question, he says, "Oh yeah, by the way, Joe Thornton's going to be playing the left wing with Matthews and Marner." It sort of like took everyone one aback, and I can understand that. But circumstance may change things. Alex Kerfoot got hurt yesterday in training camp. There's no idea of the severity of the injury. But he may be at least out day to day. And with only 10 days, until the beginning of from the beginning of training camp to the season, they may have to shake up their line combinations, and maybe that moves Thornton to the middle, or they bring up somebody else from their second group. But I think everything is in flux right now. But I do think that if Kerfoot comes back, that they will start the season with Thornton, with Matthews and Marner. I agree with you. I don't think it's a long-term thing, but I think it's something that, in wooing Thornton to the Leafs, I'm sure Kyle Dubas said, yeah, you'll get a chance to play with Tavares. You'll get a chance to play with Matthews. And I'm sure that was a swaying factor in his decision to sign with the Leafs.
Hey, Mike, great to see you again. Haven't seen you in a long time.
Hey, Tom, how's it going? Happy New Year.
Very good. Same to you. I'm a believer that Kyle Dubas, when he took over this team, was trying to build a team of speed and finesse. Mm-hmm. And then it appeared a lot of pressure, either the way they played, the way they didn't play, pressure from other people. I kind of made him shift his direction a little bit. This is my opinion anyways, and have now maybe a tougher team, a grittier team. Do you agree with that assessment?
I think it's a more experienced team, and in places a little bit of a tougher team. But Brian Burke has made the point on his appearances on Hockey Central up in Toronto. The Leafs didn't get tougher by the addition of Wayne Simmons. They replaced Kyle Clifford with Wayne Simmons. And Wayne Simmons is playing fourth line, at least right now, in training camp. So the expectation from him is more of an energy forward and not the 30-goal scorer that he was in Philadelphia. And I think he's capable of fulfilling that role. But they added Zach Bogosian, and Bogosian's a tough defender, but I've seen him enough times in Buffalo to know that he was always in and out of the lineup with injuries. But I just think they improved the quality of the team. Adding TJ Brody and probably putting him on the top pairing with Morgan Riley is going to really improve the defense. Bogosian is a veteran depth defenseman. The unknown factors of a couple KHL imports. Mikko Lehtinen won the KHL version of the Norris Trophy last year, and there are people joking about him being the Finnish Bobby Orr, which is like calling Michael Nylander the Swedish Wayne Gretzky. I mean, if they can get a bottom pairing or have it be like a number 4, that's a win in terms of bringing somebody over from the KHL. But he's an unknown commodity, and they have another KHL guy named Alexander Barabanov who put up some nice totals in the KHL that is playing a depth role. So, if they have success, that just improves the overall quality of the team. But I don't know if they're ready to go rough and tumble with teams. I think they're going to try to outskill them. And if you look at the division, I mean, a team like Montreal, who added Josh Anderson, who added Edmondson, who signed Corey Perry, they seem more ready to play that rough and tumble style than the Leafs are.
Mike, I want to get into your discussion on the revamped Toronto defense, particularly the additions of TJ Brody and um, Bogosian. Yeah, Bogosian. I think for the longest time, people, maybe not so much Leafs Nation, who had a better handle on it, but outside was the idea that the only way that the Leafs were going to turn the corner is if they could get a big time defenseman, Peter Angelo or something like that. And this is obviously not that type of move. You're bringing in two defensemen who will have, specific roles, and, their playing style is well established. I think Bogosian sort of reinvented himself when he moved to Tampa Bay, and I think he sort of established, what he could do sort of as a role defenseman, as a guy that can come in. I guess my question to you is this: is it enough after all the times they've tried to change it and look at it and address it? Was this all along what they needed? What's your observation about that?
It's what they've needed for years, and there's still questions about whether what they've done this year will be successful. Proof is in the pudding. We'll see during the regular season. But, Kyle Dubas has been loath to commit to a long-term solution on defense. Last year, he brings in Cody Ceci in a trade from Ottawa, escaping the Nikita Zaitsev long-term contract. He was misplayed as a top four defenseman, where he's more of a bottom pairing guy, and that's what he's going to be doing in Pittsburgh. They bring in Tyson Barrie, and that was a disaster until Babcock was fired, because Babcock tried to make him into a two-way defenseman. And Tyson Barrie is the prototype of an offensive defenseman, point man on the power play, guy who generates offense, and you can't make that guy into a two-way defenseman. So it was an ill fit with those two defensemen, and this year, they committed to Brody for 4 years at $5 million. They committed only a year to Bogosian and only a year to Lettinen. So if this doesn't work, and they've re-signed Jake Muzzin, if this doesn't work, I think all these moves on defense have been predicated on the fact that Dubas does not want to touch the core group of this team: Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander. The first three I mentioned aren't going anywhere no matter what. Nylander, as we've discussed on the Buzzcast a bunch of times, Kevin, Nylander is the guy who's the most movable and the most attractive, making a little less than $7 million. And if they don't have success this year with a defense that's been revamped, if they lose in the first round, or if their defense is a constant problem, then the only solution open to Dubas is trading Nylander to clear his cap space, or trading him for a defenseman that helps them. I was an advocate for them going after Alex Pietrangelo, but the price would have been trading Nylander, and Dubas didn't want to do that. So we will see if the changes that they made going into the season will be successful, and if they're not, whether Dubas will even be around to make the changes, we'll see.
I hear you with the defenseman there. I guess I look back, I think it was the first of these last two cups that Pittsburgh won. I think we're all sitting around saying pretty much, man, they don't have a good enough defense there. But if you can get the team to play better defensively as a unit, all six guys, you can survive. I think long term, yes, you want to have those higher end, like a Pietrangelo defenseman, but you can if those forwards really buy into playing two-way hockey. Let me ask you, the one guy, and I like him as a player a lot, John Tavares. Do you think if they were to do it again, they would still sign him, knowing that they like the cap space that it takes up? I like him as a player. I'm not saying that was a bad move, but it takes up a lot of your cap space. It's almost like if you got too many good forwards at a high salary.
Well, everybody expected that the Tavares signing was going to mean trouble for the Leafs down the line when they came to re-sign Nylander, Marner, and Matthews, because all of them were on their entry-level contracts when Tavares was signed. I think at part, Lou Lamoriello was at fault because he had an opportunity to get Nylander signed before the last year of his ELC and wasn't proactive and didn't do it. And then there was the holdout situation until December. And I think that Dubas, and maybe it was a mistake of a young general manager, a lot of people believe that, he surrendered when it came to Nylander. Nylander got a 6-year deal at around a little under $7 million. And a lot of people believe he didn't deserve that contract. And if you look at it now compared to some other deals, it's it's reasonable. But the precedent that it's set for Matthews and Marner, they paid Matthews the second highest salary in the league in the middle of the season, and I don't think there was a complaint about that because he's a great player. But the problem was then Marner was going to expect to be paid just as much. So then you had 3 players over $10 million, and you lost all your flexibility, and they were depending on the cap going up, with revenues going up, and now with the pandemic and with everything being dragged down because of that, now they have 3 $10 million players and Nylander, and that makes up almost 50% of their cap, and they have no flexibility. So for the next few years, until they decide to move one of those players, they're going to be signing Zach Bogosians to 1-year deals to plug holes, and that's not a great place to be. But Dubas is not alone in that. There are a lot of general managers who are in that place right now.
Totally.
Yeah, I got to challenge you a little bit on it. Do you think the Nylander contract had any impact on Marner contract and Matthews contract?
I think it did in terms of philosophy when it came to maybe not as much Matthews. Matthews was going to get paid one way or the other. With Marner, Marner and his agent were essentially threatening to do a holdout in a similar way to Nylander, and the Leafs didn't want to go down that way. So they, I love Mitch Marner as a talent. He's a great player. I just don't think he's an $11 million player, but they had to pay him because they paid Matthews, and Matthews had to get top dollar because I think they in a way surrendered with Nylander. If they would have held the line on Nylander and say, you're going to take a bridge deal like, Lou Lamoriello does all the time, or like other general managers do. I don't think that Marner or Matthews would have taken bridge deals, but I think that the money that they would have been able to get from the Leafs would have been much more reasonable. And if you shave a couple $3 million off those contracts, that's a good defenseman. That's a player. So I think that was the early inexperience of Dubas coming to the forefront, but they've got 4 great players, so you can't really complain too much.
Yeah.
And Toronto is one of those places too. When you have a holdout there, I represented Brian Berard when he held out 1 year in Toronto, and it's a unique situation, right? The media there, the coverage, and I know there's Montreal and all those places, but in Toronto, if you're a good player and that you get into the season, like we even offered to have Brian go into training camp without a contract, and they didn't want that because they knew the pressure that would be on them from the fans and media and everything. So once now you got a new GM in there, and Kyle Dubas, he gives in to the player to give him what he wants, and now every other player on the team knows if you're Marty or Matthews and Tavares that you want a contract, just threaten a holdout, and it's going to happen. You're going to get what you want there. They won't let it go. But no, I listen. I look at that team, and I don't know how you feel, Mike. I just feel like, man, that's a talented team. But like Marner is a good example, like a really talented player. But are you going to win with that? I mean, obviously he's going to get better and more mature as a player as he gets older. But I just have my question marks with the team. It's just the makeup of the team. Again, I really thought they were going in one direction. It looks like they kind of shifted directions a little bit with more gritty players. But like you said, maybe they had to, but the salary cap being flat the way it is, that they had to sign the Bogosians as opposed to really going hard for a Pietrangelo or something like that to get him.
Well, I thought that they got pushed around a little bit by Columbus in the playoffs. I think they played more responsible defensively, but that came at the cost of their offense. And in that series, if it wasn't for that 3-goal rally late in Game 4 to tie the game and then win it with the Matthews goal, I mean, they would have been eliminated in 4 games. They had barely scored. I think they averaged 2 goals a game with that offense, and that was the thing. They really couldn't fight through the Tortorella defense on Columbus. And it's this 56 game schedule. There are no easy games in this North Division. I mean, Ottawa's improved, Montreal's improved. The teams out west are all good. So I think this is the toughest of the 4 divisions. So people predicting the Leafs winning the division, get a new job. You don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know how these teams are going to react to each other playing 9 or 10 times, and it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I agree.
Mike, we're running out of time, but I want to put you on the spot a couple of times before I let you drive away. Number one, we came off an off season when there were a lot of goaltenders available. There was a lot of discussion about whether or not the Leafs needed to change their goaltender. Did you see anyone out there that you thought made sense from a salary cap perspective, from a talent perspective, from a competition perspective? Did Dubas make the right decision by staying with Anderson?
I think he made the right decision staying with Anderson, but there were options out there that I believe would have been better. I mean, it's all a question of, do you want to make a goaltending change that will be for the next 3 or 4 years? I mean, the guy that I centered in on was Matt Murray. His value was down in Pittsburgh. Ottawa traded a second-round pick to get him. The price there was to re-sign him, and he signed a 4-year deal over $6 million, which is more than Anderson makes. That extra $1 million and that commitment for 4 years may have been too rich for what the Leafs wanted to do, but I think that Matt Murray, who has won 2 Stanley Cups, is a young, quality goaltender, and I think he's going to bounce back with Ottawa. But after that, I don't think they wanted to spend the money on Markstrom, and I don't think they thought that the shorter solutions of Corey Crawford or who am I drawing the blank of? Braden Holtby were equal to Anderson. I mean, Anderson wasn't the reason they lost in the playoffs. Yeah. I mean, and I think that Anderson has been abused by the Toronto fan base and probably some people in the media because he didn't come up big against Boston in a couple of the series. The guy has played more games than I think anyone in the last four seasons. He's been forced to play 60 plus games, and I think that was a fault of Babcock and not having any confidence, and Dubas not getting a quality backup. They have a quality backup in Jack Campbell. I think he'll probably end up playing about 20 to 25 games, and it won't be an automatic loss when Anderson is not in the net. So I'm anxious to see a rested Anderson in the playoffs and how he plays, because I think in a lot of these seasons with the Leafs, he was just worn out.
Right. Quick question though, real quick. Does Kyle Dubas lose his job if they don't make the playoffs?
Well, if they don't make the playoffs, I think it's a distinct possibility. But the funny thing is that the impression is that they got to go more than a round for him not to lose his job. I think he's got support with Brendan Shanahan. I think if things fall apart and they don't have a good year, if it's based on injuries, if it's based on it just being a weird year, he may have one more year to change things and get a chance. But his job is on the line. I mean, this is his 3rd year. He's made changes. Nothing has had success when it came to the postseason, which is all that it means. They haven't won a first-round series since 2004. So it's getting that time for Kyle Dubas. It's either what or get off the pot.
Yep. All right, Mike, we're going to let you go, but I said I was going to pitch on the hot seat twice. And so the second question is, you've talked about Toronto's changes. You went a little bit into Montreal's changes. Montreal also added a defenseman in Edmondson. Who did more in the offseason, Toronto or Montreal, to make themselves better?
I think Montreal did, but I think Montreal was much worse going into the offseason than Toronto was. I mean, you added Edmondson, you added Toffoli, Josh Anderson, if healthy, is a impact forward. I like the addition of Corey Perry as sort of an irritant. And the Jake Allen Price combo is a pretty solid 1-2. I think Montreal really improved, but I think Toronto improved as well, and I think they were a better team going into it. So I think they're still better, but Montreal is going to be tough, and all the teams in the North are going to be tough.
Mike, it was a pleasure. We appreciate having you on. A lot of insight. I really appreciated your perspective and your explanation of why the Nylander contract had an impact on Marner. And hope you have a good day. Are you headed off to Toronto training camp?
I wish, with the border situation, I won't be probably going up to Toronto for games until March or April, whenever Justin Trudeau allows me back in the country. But I'll be watching every game and reporting on it for Hockey Buzz. But thank you guys for having me on the show.
Good job, Mike. Hey, listen, great job not letting Kevin put you on the hot seat. You fought him off. He tries hard to put you on the hot seat.
I thought he was going to ask me a Buffalo Bills question.
No, I wouldn't do that to you. Yeah. I believe in the Bills, though, by the way. All right. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Hey, Mike. Thanks, guys.
That was Mike Agello. That Tom, that was a terrific interview. I thought he had a lot of insight.
He's good.
Yeah, and I really did appreciate his explanation. I think a lot of people, and that's why I asked that question, didn't really comprehend when people said that it had an impact on the Marner negotiation. It wasn't the dollar amount.
Yeah.
What it was is the fact, as Mike explained, was the surrender, giving into the long-term deal, therefore allowing Marner. Now, who knows? Marner may have been able, because of his ability and talent, to move beyond the bridge deal anyway. But once he did that with Nylander, that certainly made the strategy clear for the Marner camp that, look, we're not giving in on a bridge deal.
Yeah, totally. As an agent to represent players, general managers build reputations. Glenn Sather had a reputation where you're not going to hold out with Glenn Sather because he'll just say, fine, go away. I don't care. Lou Lamoriello is the same way. But Kyle Dubas, as a young general manager, was being tested. And it was really an opportunity for him because I like Nylander as a player, but I think that team can get along without Nylander. I mean, yes, you'd prefer to have him in the lineup, but as a young GM, you need to prove yourself that you're not giving in. And he didn't prove that. So, yeah, I mean, Marner's going to get what he's, Matthews especially is going to get the money he's going to get, irrespective of what happens with other players. But, the reputation that he now built as a general manager kind of took a little bit of a hit. So.
Well, and I like Dubas as a GM, and I liked some of the moves he's made. But I think your question was a valid one. What happens? In the existing divisions that we had, I don't think there was a lot of pressure on Toronto. They were going to be in. That's not true on this All Canadian division. I think this is going to be a dogfight. And again, Mike's point was very valid. We don't know what the competition will look like in this original 6 style of schedule. Where you're playing one team 9 or 10 times. That is a major, major difference.
Yeah, and like I said, like Ottawa's made themselves like a harder team to play against. We talk about Montreal being a harder team to play against. Vancouver's taking a step forward. Yeah, it's going to be tough on Toronto. They could end up, maybe it's great for them. Maybe they learn a lot of gritty lessons, like how to fight through games, because they're going to be a lot of physical games for them. Or they could just wilt away and just fade away. And it's interesting talking to Mike, because I picked Toronto to win that division, but after sitting there and listening to him talk about that division, you think, well, maybe it's not such a slam dunk after all that they just win that division, right? It's not going to be that easy.
Well, but here's what happened on that, because I've been talking about this actually. Like, everybody says the same thing. Like, that division is wide open, that everybody's capable of winning it, and then we all take Toronto. Well, the reason we all take Toronto is on the basis of talent. If it's wide open, and I think most of us believe sincerely that it is, and I would even say is Ottawa is going to beat probably all of those teams multiple times. Yeah, that's just the way it works. These are professional hockey players, and they may not be anywhere near where Toronto is, but could they beat them on it? Well, yeah, sure.
Well, I look at Ottawa a lot like Clyde look at Columbus, where it's, yes, maybe not as talented a lineup, but man, they've got some kids that come to play there. And then the additions they made, like Stepan is a professional hockey player. He comes to play. He may not be the grittiest guy in the world, but he competes every night. He's a leader. Picking up Coburn from Tampa, I thought was a big thing. Yes, he's not going to be a top 2 defenseman, but he's that gritty guy, the gritty leader that's been around. So, yeah, I'm with you. Before they made those moves, I thought, okay, well, they're a long way away, Ottawa. They're doing some good stuff, good draft picks, and good young kids and everything. But man, I think they really made that into a competitive team. So,
yeah. The other point I was going to make, and we circled it at the end there about Montreal, and I brought this up before, but it bears repeating. And that is after all those moves are done, and Mike was right on. Like, the Montreal was coming from a place where they were well beyond a back of Toronto. Yeah. Their offense. I mean, Toronto has a top 2 offense in the league. To me, it's either Tampa Bay or Toronto has the best, offense. Tampa Bay's might be deeper, but they don't have 4 players, like that. They have a couple, but they don't have 4. So it's one or the other. But with what Montreal did, and I think even the Jake Allen acquisition, which to me was, look, you can criticize Bergevin for paying so much money in his goaltending, but good Lord, a combination of Carey Price and Jake Allen, that's outstanding. And Edmondson was a really nice pickup for them. Knows his role, kind of defenseman you like. Yep. Gets the job done.
Definitely.
Is not if Herb Brooks, the late Herb Brooks, God bless it, rest his soul, if he was coaching him, he'd be happy with Edmondson.
Totally,
yeah.
Like in Montreal too, what they've done is like they've sent a message to me, like with the signing of the extra goaltender, like of that quality, to say, listen, we're here this is for real. The expectation is for us to win. We're not this young team anymore that has an excuse that we're just still building. We built a team here that we expect to win. And to me, that's a big difference, right? And again, I like the character of that team a lot. Any team that's got Shea Weber and Carey Price, I mean, two guys that are like a world competition of playing the Olympics and all the stuff that they've done. I just think that they're really like, I do like Montreal. It's funny because, I picked Toronto, and then I'm sitting here talking this through, and I'm thinking, man, yeah, you're right. It isn't a slam dunk for Toronto at all. I do like Montreal. I do like Vancouver. I'm not as high on Calgary maybe, but, in Edmonton, look at Edmonton too. What are they going to do? So.
Yeah, no. And, what's forgotten about, it's not forgotten. Let me rephrase that. What we sometimes don't factor in is Edmonton with Draisaitl and Connor McDavid is very similar to Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you've got, Crosby and Malkin, like, you were talking about their defense maybe wasn't as good as they wanted to be, right, but they had Crosby and Malkin.
Yeah. Yep.
And that helps. Well, same thing with Toronto. Like Montreal's goaltending, Montreal's defense is better.
Yes.
Better than Toronto.
Yep.
But Toronto's offense with those big four,
right,
Montreal's just not there.
Right.
So,
but here's the comparison, though. You mentioned Crosby and Malkin. Like, they both play well defensively, too. In fact, very well defensively.
Yeah.
Now, will Marner and Matthews become those kind of players? Like, to me, they're not there right now. That doesn't mean they can't get there, but right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just remember your good friend that you shared power play time with, the great Wayne Gretzky, saying, if I have the puck, the other team can't score.
Yeah.
That's good defense.
Yeah, that's pretty good defense.
Yeah. So it does work. And Wayne had the puck a lot.
Yes, he did.
And when you were on the ice with him, I noticed you gave it to him.
Very quickly. And if he ever gave it to me, I give it back to him very quickly.
Yeah.
It is funny when you play with players like that, though. You do kind of remember when you first play with them, there is that tendency to try to get him the puck all the time. Like, you overdo it, right? And he'll even say to you in a while, like, okay, set him down. You don't, and you get over it. But it's just, you're playing with Wayne Gretzky, like, get him the puck. So.
Yeah. Well, and you appreciate it as a teammate. And this, there's really no comparison here, but I think it's a kind of a fun little thing for people who are recreation athletes. I remember playing in a basketball league with another sports writer, and we were on a team, and he had been a top flight high school player and was very good recreation. We were in a YMCA league, and we would come down together, and he'd run our offense because he could handle the ball. He was terrific, and he'd dump that ball off to me, and he'd say, "Hit that." And he'd say it in such a way like he really believed that I was going to hit it,
Nice.
And I thought at that point it gave me an understanding of the way sports are. Like, if you're on a team and Wayne Gretzky gives the puck to you and you give it back, and then he gives it back to you again, that gives you a little confidence. Like, Wayne trusts me with the puck.
Yeah, totally.
Wayne trusts me with the puck.
Yeah.
He's the greatest puck handler in the league, and he trusts me with it. So I think all of that, even at a professional level, like, it has a real big impact when you're playing rec league. But in the professional league, I think it makes a really big difference.
No question. I was so lucky that it started my career. Phil Esposito was still playing, right? So as a rookie, just be on the ice with Phil Esposito, and he's passing me the puck. I remember I scored my first goal. I was in front of the net. Freddie Shero put me in front of the net. We're playing in Vancouver, and Barry Beck and Phil Esposito assisted on me scoring my first goal. They shot it. I put in the rebound, and there I was getting patted on the back by Phil Esposito. It was an amazing feeling. Yeah, like, you really felt like, wow, I'm part of this.
Yeah, one thing that I see more of in the NBA, not that I'm a huge NBA fan, but I watch in college basketball too. I see it enough to have noticed this, is when there's a good assist in basketball, the guy points to the guy right away, like right to him. Said, you created that. I'd love to see that in hockey. We celebrate. They do it
Right.
sometimes, but not as much. Like when they come together, we're usually celebrating the guy that scored the goal. You know, we're
Right.
all hugging them, because that's the drama of the moment, and that's the highlight that we're going to remember. But you know, I would love to see a little more recognition of that guy. I in the World Juniors, I saw on it was in the semifinals. I can't even remember the player now. Defenseman made just a great. And it wasn't one of the U.S.'s top defensemen either. Anyway, made just a great pass, like it was a 50-foot pass to send a guy on a breakaway. And then there was a big celebration. The guy scored on a breakaway, which was, great. I mean, it was a big goal. But I thought, where's everybody hugging on that guy?
Well, I think they do it privately, right? When they all come together in that scrum when they first score, usually the goal scorer and other guys go, well, that's a great pass. But yeah, they don't do it maybe as much that everybody else can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, like the fan base, because sometimes, the fans are, having a ginger ale and they may be sipping on the ginger ale and they missed that pass. But if the guy pointed to the guy, if he said, that was you, man, that was you. I just and you see it a lot in the NBA. For some reason. So, anyway, I wanted to go to the World Juniors before we go. A huge game, and before we went on the air, Tom and I were talking about, and Tom had brought it up, just how far the Americans have come.
Yeah.
It has been. Let's be real. Like, because Tom and I are older, we don't recognize that time has marched on. But look, this has taken a long time too.
Yeah.
In the 1980s and early 90s, Canada was whipping on the U.S. And let's go back to 2005, 2009, when Canada reeled off 5 consecutive gold medals at the World Junior Championship. They owned that tournament. They should have been paying a mortgage on it. They owned it. But that's not the case anymore. And it's not just the U.S. Like, Finland's won 3 times in the last 8 years, and now America has stepped up again. But here's the interesting stat that Tom and I both honed in on. Despite all the fact that you and I both believe that, and America has gone to school from being so close to the Canadian program. They've learned. The Canadian, they know how to build teams. That's what they do. And I think we've learned from that. And we've kind of watched that. But in World Junior competition now, over the last 20 years, U.S. and Canada have met 4 times in gold medal games at the World Junior Championships, and America's 4-0. Like, that's almost unfathomable for us old timers that remembered what it was like when the late Art Berglund, who just passed away, would have to scramble around to try to get college teams to give permission to allow their players to go. And now you want your guys there, playing against the elite competition, getting better. So,
well, what I like about the U.S. too is they made a conscious decision to get better. The U.S. development program, it really wasn't just by accident that these kids developed. Like, they really had a plan in place. This is how we're going to do it. And I think, the guys like Art Berglund and everybody else who's been a part of that deserve a lot of kudos for that too.
Yeah, and the late Jimmy Johansson, and now John Van Beesbrook, a former teammate of yours, is now director of national teams, and he pieces this together. And much like Canada, and for Canada, this is just business as usual. Canada doesn't get all of its top players because they're in the NHL. That happened to the U.S. Robertson from Toronto, who was supposed to be one of their main guys. Either he decided or Toronto decided or both of them decided he wasn't going to play. So it's all in all. But I think this is really good for the NHL to see America doing well. We saw on that American team, Trevor Zegras, who is going to go to the Ducks, terrific player, Patrick Kane type player. He's going to be an impact player. I think this season he'll play. And Turcotte going to the Kings.
You got to kind of wonder, right? Does the effect of the pandemic and whether the American League teams, are they going to play? Some of these junior teams, are they going to play? Does that now mean that the NHL team are kind of forced to keep some of those younger players too, right? Because there's no junior team to go to. Those top young kids, they've got to play. So it'd be interesting to see what happens after this.
Yeah, and I think they will do that. I don't see. I mean, we know Dylan Cousins is going to play in Buffalo, and boy, he looks good for Canada. There were several players that we saw in that Canada-U.S. game that are going to have an impact on their NHL teams. But anyway, we are cruising in on 35 minutes. You're going to see us creep up a little bit on time. We're now you can find us. Tom, can you fill us in a little bit on where we're?
We're going. There's a new platform that we're going to have our show on, and it's radio.co. Now there's a radio.com, which is radio stations, but this is radio.co. It's all online. The name of the show is 365 Sports. And our shows now will be broadcast there. I think our show airtime will be 6 o'clock, so you can still watch us here on YouTube. On Facebook, and you can see it on my YouTube channel as well. But radio.co is 365 Sports. So really interesting. Just another way you can listen to us.
Yeah, and we're going to have guests. We've decided to do that. I have guests on my other podcast, and I enjoy bringing in a different perspectives. I hope you enjoyed Mike Agello today, who is pretty wired in. We're going to have some guys that you know and some that you don't know that we're going to introduce to you. I hope to get to John Van Beesbrook. I probably would have had a USA Hockey person today, if not for the fact they were traveling, getting home from Alberta. So,
and then you've still got your other show too with Bob Duff that you do, correct?
I do. I do have that, and we're going to have Brian Hedger of the Columbus Blue Jackets on Thursday to talk about the Dubois situation as well. And I think next week we're probably going to end up with Rick Sadowski, who's going to talk to us about the Colorado Avalanche and what they've got going. Tom knows him from his Los Angeles Kings days.
Great guy. I like him.
Yeah.
Where do you find that show again? What's the name of that show you've got with Bob?
It's my hockeydebates.com podcast, and that's where you can find it most easily. If you go to hockeydebates.com, links right there on it. And we do that on, I have to think about it now. See, we do that on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And
you like going on.
Yeah, I do.
You're busier now that you're not with USA Today.
I actually am quite busy.
And then people can go to hockeybuzz.com. You write there on a regular basis as well.
I do. I'm writing there as well, and I'll have some announcements coming up here in the next week. As most of you know, I write books as well, and I'm close to completing a contract to work on a book about another player that most of you will recognize, and also reveal this because I don't think he'll mind. There's a pretty good chance that Darren McCarty and I are going to collaborate again on another book. He and I worked together on a book, and it was one of the most successful books I ever had. We went through 3 printings. Really? Darren is brutally honest about his life, and he's going to talk about what's happened to him now, including the fact that he's a stand-up comedian now.
Is he really? Is that right?
Yeah, I was with him. It's the only time during the pandemic that I have broken my careful behavior. I went to at his request, and this group of people wanted Darren McCarty and I to come in and talk hockey. And it was a small group, and I went there and had a great time. And Darren and I talked about the possibility of doing this. But Darren, we were both supposed to talk about hockey. But since that Darren and I have written that book, he has really worked at his craft. And so basically he said, Kevin, he says, I can't remember what's in our book, but can you just tee me up? And then I'll get going from there. And so that's what I did. I didn't have to do much talking because I would say, hey, Darren, can you remember the time you almost killed the greatest living Detroit Red Wings hockey player? And you go, oh, yeah. And you tell the story about being in a wrestling match with Steve Eisenman and slamming him against the 20th floor glass at a hotel. Then I would tee him up on other stories. But he's very funny. Right. He does a great job. He has done a lot of comedy clubs in Michigan, and he has about an hour 15 routine.
Wow.
He does a really good job, and he's doing terrific. The night we were there, he celebrated his 5th anniversary of not having a drink.
Right. Wow, that's fantastic. Wow, I'm glad to hear that. Because I remember him having a real great personality too. That's great. Well, and my book is almost done too. We're having to go to some publishers now. And then at the request of a lot of our viewers, I'm going to do a cookbook as well. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a more of your what is it? Your pasta that we have?
The chickpea pasta.
Chickpea pasta. Yeah.
I'm big on chickpeas now. I even made hummus the other day. First time I had made hummus with the chickpeas as well. Quite a bit of garlic in there too. Good for social distancing. So nobody's coming near me.
Yeah, it's funny. I was with my wife one time in a Mediterranean restaurant, and my wife will engage anyone at any time and talk to them. And so it's one of those restaurants where the chef comes out and talks to you about his food. And she was just raving about their hummus because she makes hummus for years. Right. And she said, "How is it that my hummus never comes out?" And then he lowered his head and he whispered, "All fresh ingredients." Oh, he said, that is the key. He said, really? Yeah, he said it always has to be fresh. No canned garbanzo beans and all that stuff. If you really,
I use canned beans. I actually was pretty happy with my my hummus. It came out just like the store-bought hummus.
My wife's hummus is terrific too, but it's not as good. Like when you go to a Mediterranean restaurant,
that's probably true.
It's just good. So anyway, for whatever that's worth. So I'll have to be a guest on your cooking show when you have it.
We could get Darren McCarty on too if he's. That'd be funny to have him on.
I'll get Darren to come on for sure. So
perfect. All right, buddy.
See you later.
See you guys.